What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Chris, man. We are here at the Work Hard, Play Harder podcast. It is Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. My name is Chris Drummond. I am a freelance sports reporter based out of Minnesota here and proprietor of this podcast, Work Hard, Play Harder, where I bring individuals on to talk about their why and get to know them outside of their occupation. I got a special guest that's going to be coming on with me today. She is a returning guest to the Work Hard, Play Harder podcast. It's been a while since we talked, but she is also host of LO underscore Red Sox, LO standing for Locked On Red Sox, which you can check her out on a weekly basis. She's also the host of Boston Balling podcast, and she also does Patriots content. Obviously, she's based out of Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts. Her name is Gabby, and we are going to talk some sports with her, catch up with her, because it's been a long time since I've talked to my homegirl out there in Boston. So, without any further ado, I introduce you the wonderful, talented, and the beautiful Gabby.
Hi.
Hello there. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. It's been a long time since we caught up with each other.
I know. Yeah, it has been a minute.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But it's wonderful to see you. Obviously, you got a name change. Congratulations on that, on getting
Yeah,
married. Because
thank
last
you.
time you was a different name, so a different last
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, I
So
know, right?
right, right. How do you say your last name?
Maljanian.
Maljanian. Okay, I
Yeah,
like that. That's beautiful. I like that.
thank you.
I want to say thank you for allocating your time to me, for coming on my podcast again, Gabby. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Obviously, a lot of us, obviously, I should say a lot of us, both of us has had some changes and some differences going on in our lives. And I'm just very blessed to have you back on here. Obviously, not a dull moment in Boston sports, especially for the past, I would say, couple of months, maybe even more. I definitely want to get into some Boston sports talk with you. Obviously, the big time news was the Rafael Devers trade that happened just a couple of days ago. We also we're gonna talk about some Celtics, and we're also gonna talk some Patriots as well. But first off, I knew I wanted to talk to you. I didn't want to talk to nobody else from Boston until I heard this Rafael Devers trade and what you were saying. Because people that know you know that you do Locked On Red Sox. Um, you're the host of that, so you do that on a weekly basis. So tell me, what was your thoughts? Because I was bewildered. I was shocked that they would trade him mid season to the Giants. I mean, shout out to Buster Posey for doing what he's doing because he working numbers over there. But what were your thoughts on the trade when it happened, when it went down, and what have you found out since then?
Yeah, so definitely initially it was shock of what? Like, did I read this correctly? When I saw the pass in notification, I was like, I need to
Right,
go back and reread this. Like, there's no way. Like, is this a fake account or is this real? And
right.
then the realization started to sink in of wow, they actually pulled the trigger and they actually traded Rafael Devers. And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, the biggest thing that was a surprise to me was the timing of when all of it went down because the Red Sox had gained some momentum. They had won their fifth game in a row. They had
Yep,
just swept the Yankees, and it felt like they were starting to play better baseball. They had won four of their last five series, and
yep.
things were really seemingly starting to click. And then this news breaks, and fans can't even be excited about the fact that they just swept the Yankees because they find out that Rafael Devers is no longer a part of the team. So
Right.
that was the biggest thing for me initially was why then? Why at that moment? And in the last few days, ever since this has all been kind of processing and I've been hearing more and more about it, what
Sure.
I have heard from some people internally is that there was a lot more tension between Rafael Devers and the front office and the
Okay.
clubhouse than what
Mhm.
was being said to the public.
Sure.
So it started with the front office really when they kind of dropped the ball and didn't handle the situation correctly at all during spring training when they
Yeah.
basically just dropped a bombshell on Devers saying, oh, by the way, Alex Bregman's here. He's going to play third base. You're moving to DH, which led to him saying, like, no, I'm a third baseman. Like, that's my position. Like, what are you talking about? Um,
Right.
So what they should have done is, rather than blindsiding him at that point, they really should have informed him earlier that they were shopping the third base market and kind of seeing what was out there, to at least kind of prep him for the fact that there may be somebody brought in to play third base. And I don't know how confident they were that Alex Bregman was actually going to choose Boston. There wasn't really this sense of full 100% confidence that he was going to go here. So then when he chose Boston, then the
Right.
Red Sox were like, all right, by the way, Devers, you're moving to DH. So he didn't like that. That rubbed him the wrong way completely. He and the front office just continued to butt heads. And then when Tristan Casas went down with a season ending injury, and the front
That,
office approached Devers again and said, hey, we need you to play first base because
right.
Casas is, not going to be playing for the rest of the season. And he said no again. That was more a result of all this built up tension that he had with the front office. Had they handled this all better earlier on, my impression was that he would have played first base. It wasn't the idea of switching to first base. It was more so because he was mad at the front office and he didn't
Sure.
want to move because he was really fed up with them. But because the front office endeavors were butting heads a lot, it kind of leaked over into the clubhouse. And there were players who were starting to get a bad vibe from him, and there wasn't really a sense of good team camaraderie with him there, at least to my understanding. And Alex Cora always had Rafi's back and was always there for him, would always stand up for him, and would always kind of try to build a good
Absolutely.
relationship with him.
Yes.
But the way that the players reacted to the trade wasn't as much sadness as what people would have thought. The GM Craig Breslow tried to approach the team to give an explanation about the trade, and a lot of them basically said, we don't need an explanation, like it's okay, it's one player, we have 26 guys here who still believe we can win. And who knows internally if some of them were more upset than what they were expressing, but there wasn't this big sense of sadness around the clubhouse, which kind of
Right.
speaks volumes as to where the team was at. So ultimately, what led to the decision by the front office was it became harder and harder for them to justify paying him as much as they were if he wasn't willing to do what the team needed him to do. And obviously, nobody could have anticipated Casas's injury. That just kind of is what
That
it
just happened.
is.
Right.
And so they were backed into a corner. They weren't trying to make Devers switch all kinds of positions throughout the course of the season. It was
Right.
just when they felt like they didn't have another option and they called him and they said, hey, play first. And he said no. So essentially, it became harder for them to justify paying him as much as they were for the rest of this contract if he's unwilling to do what the team needs him to do. So essentially, Craig Breslow sat down and said, I know we're losing one of the best hitters in the sport,
Yep.
arguably, and the
Yeah.
offensive productivity that he provides is something that's going to hurt us. But he essentially put the numbers together and took his overall value and said, how much is he providing that is making such a drastic difference that we can't move on from him? And so he made a decision that was best for the future of the team. He said, we have a lot of young guys here, and we're really strategic about the environment that we surround the younger players in. So, in so many words, that was essentially saying that Devers wasn't contributing to a positive environment. And they didn't
Right.
want to send the message to the younger players that it's okay to just do whatever you want and not do what
Right.
we ask you to do. So they
Right.
met with Devers individually a couple weeks ago. They tried to come to a resolution about his role with the team, and they couldn't come
Wow.
to an agreement on where things were. Devers saw a different vision for his future with the team than the team did, and they tried to work that out and they couldn't. So here we are now, and he's no longer a part of the Boston
A
Red
Red
Sox,
Sox.
and it's still really upsetting. And it still like hasn't fully hit me still, I don't think. Like I think it
Right.
will when they play the Giants this weekend and I see him
Yep.
in the opposing uniform is really when it will hit me. But that's the biggest thing about that for me. And I think the other thing to keep in mind too is obviously the return in terms of the players they got back in the trade felt a little bit
Yeah.
underwhelming for the type of player that Devers is. There's definitely some talent there. Kyle Harrison's really excited to be a part of the Red Sox organization. Jordan Hicks is hurt right now, so they're not going to be able
Yep.
to utilize him right away. And they got a couple talented prospects. But I think people were upset that they didn't get a bigger named player. And I think the primary reason for that is because the Giants agreed to take on the entirety of the rest of Devers' contract, which they
Wow.
did speak to a couple other teams who were
Yeah.
unwilling to do that. So I think that's what sold the Red Sox on San Francisco's offer in particular, is because the Red Sox aren't paying a single cent of that contract moving forward.
Ooh, that's a lot they dumped on them as far as that financial for what Devers has remaining on that contract for sure. That was going to be my next question, Gabby, was what do you think about the guys they got in return? Like, because to me, I looked at that and I was like, okay, it's cool to get prospects. Jordan Hicks is hurt. I don't know much about Kyle Harrison. So I'm like, but right now, I would see the AL East to me right now, and you can dispute me on this if you want to, is up for the grabs. It's up for grabs. The Yankees are not playing the dominant baseball that they played last year. The Orioles are really struggling, as well as the Blue Jays are not really playing well. Boston is starting to find their niche a little bit. Although I think a disappointment this year has been Walker Buehler to me, in my opinion. He's been a disappointment for the Red Sox. Tell me, how much of a chance do you give the Red Sox to ascend? Right, we haven't made it to July yet, so it's still kind of early. Haven't made it to the All Star break, but give me your opinion of what do you think about the guys that they got back and who and how they can possibly impact this team for the good. But also, do you think the Red Sox can ascend this particular year?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question. And I do try to remind people on my podcast that it's a long season and there's still a lot of baseball left to be played. I think
Yeah.
what you said about the AL East is accurate. I think, especially with the way the Yankees have been playing as of late,
Hmm.
they have lost five in a row. After getting swept by the Red Sox, they then dropped the first two games of the series against the
To the
Angels
Angels.
in
Yeah.
shutout fashion, which for me is great. And it has allowed the Red Sox to really kind of climb back into the division. And
Right.
suddenly the Red Sox are a lot closer because they're currently 5.5 games out of first place, which is far better than 10.5 games out, which they were like a week and a half ago.
Sure.
So it now seems like there's still so much time. And if the Red Sox continue to play, they have been playing as of late, then there's a good chance that they could continue to ascend. And the biggest reason why the Red Sox had been struggling for so long early on in the season was because of the starting pitching. They
Yep.
weren't getting length from their starting pitchers. Guys weren't throwing deep into games, and it was taxing the bullpen because Alex Cora had to go to the pen earlier in games than what was
Right.
desirable. Um,
Right.
but this run that they've had as of late, when they've been stringing together a lot of wins, is because they've been getting 6 or 7 innings out of their starters generally. And that's been the biggest difference for them. And it really has been like night and day, and it's a new team. Um, it's definitely an interesting situation now what they have with the pitching, because things just haven't been panning out the way that they have wanted them to for certain pitchers. You mentioned Walker Bueller. 100%. He's a guy who has been very hot and cold this year. He'll have a really dominant start and then he'll go and have a start like he had last night where he can't even get
Hmm.
out of the fourth inning and he has a 5 run second inning and he has no command. That's
Hmm.
kind of been the way things have gone for Bueller this season. Is he has had a couple very good outings, but other than that, he's just kind of been all over the place. And that's been
Right.
something that's really hurt the Red Sox. Tanner Houck, before he got injured, was somebody who was struggling to a drastic degree, very uncharacteristic of him because he was the Red Sox most consistent starter last year, and he was in the Cy Young conversation for the first half of the season last year. Then he started to struggle a little bit in the second half. So then he went into this season very much struggling drastically, and it became a question of, okay, is this who he is? So
Right.
he's rehabbing with the Worcester Red Sox tonight and is on his way back from injury. I'd be curious to see if the reason why he had struggled early on was because of that injury. So we'll see what type of pitcher we get from him when he comes
Sure,
back. Um,
sure.
Crochet's been Crochet. We knew what we were going to be getting from him. Absolutely
Yeah.
dominant. And then I would say a guy like Lucas Giolito has been a little bit better than I thought he was going to be. He definitely has had his struggles this season, but as of late, he's had some really solid outings. So I think he's figured out some things in terms of his arsenal and the types of pitches that he needs to execute. And he's been able to have some really strong outings as of late. I will say adding these new guys into the mix could really help increase, especially the bullpen depth. Jordan
Yep.
Hicks, Craig Breslow said they see as a late inning reliever, somebody who, when he comes back from injury, could hopefully help boost the bullpen because the pen has struggled with kind of the middle relief role. They've had Aroldis Chapman, who has been really solid closing, and their high leverage guys have overall been really good. It's more those middle relief pitchers that they aren't really finding a lot of consistency there. So they're hoping that a guy like Jordan Hicks can come in and help out with stability in that middle part of the bullpen. Kyle
Hmm.
Harrison, they're still kind of trying to figure out what his role is going to be. He is in AAA Worcester right now, so I think they aren't really 100% sure where they see him fitting in as of right now. They want to see how he adapts to being in the Red Sox organization before
Hmm.
they eventually probably call him up. I think from a pitching standpoint, that's something that could really help benefit the Red Sox. There's definitely certain things that I'd like to see both of them improve on in terms of their arsenal. But I know Jordan Hicks, gets a lot of swings and misses, and that's something that the Red Sox really value in their
Yep.
pitchers that Craig Breslow in particular really looks for. So that's somewhere that I see those guys slotting in is really helping boost that bullpen and get some more depth there because they do have a couple injuries in the pen right now as well. So that's where I see them fitting in. The Red Sox just need to maintain consistency and they 100% need to add another bat to the lineup if they really want to contend this year because obviously missing Devers, it's no mystery that their offense is going to suffer because of that,
Suffer.
especially with Alex Bregman still hurt, who was the best hitter on the team prior to getting injured. So they're going to
Yep.
need to find a way to replace him, his productivity in the lineup so that when Bregman comes back, they can couple somebody with Bregman and he's not feeling like he has to take on all of the workload because that guy was Devers before. That was the other power bat in the lineup. So they do
Hmm.
need to aggressively search for another bat. To my understanding, they are going to be looking on the first base market pretty aggressively as we approach the trade deadline because they don't
Hmm.
really have a specific first baseman right now because of Casas going down. They're kind of platooning a couple players at first base. So,
Okay.
to my understanding, they're shopping the first base market a lot, kind of seeing what's out there, who might be available at the deadline. So that's something that they really do need to find because they haven't been great with runners in scoring position. They've been winning a lot because of their pitching. So they need to maintain this level of consistency. But if they're playing baseball at the level they're playing at now, I have no doubt that they will be a playoff team. It's just a matter
Oh,
of maintaining that consistency.
I also think this Red Sox team could definitely be a playoff team. Um, and brought up a bonus question for me, and that is, do you think that Abreu or Duran, because you talked about players that maybe, without Bregman being hurt, now Devers being gone, Casas being gone, they're going to need some type of offense. They're going to need to generate some runs. Do you think the two names that come to mind is Duran and Abreu? Is those two guys that could possibly step up and take their game to another level?
Yeah, the outfield situation is really interesting right now in general because there's kind of an overhaul in the Red Sox outfield as of now, ever since they called up the number one prospect in baseball, Roman Anthony. Now they
Mhm.
have kind of an overcrowded outfield, and they've been able to get away with it over the last couple of weeks because Abreu has been injured. That was the whole
Mhm.
reason for Roman Anthony getting called up was because they had to put Abreu on the injured list. But
Right.
now he's scheduled to come back to the Red Sox on Friday, ironically, for that
Right.
series in San Francisco.
Right.
So they're going to have to figure out how they're going to navigate that outfield situation. I would not be surprised if one of those two names that you just mentioned, Duran or Abreu,
DA.
ends up in trade talks closer to the trade
Oh.
deadline,
Hmm.
because of the fact that they need to set their outfield. And if they keep all these guys around, there's not going to really be everyday roles for all of them. So, with the value that Duran and Abreu have given them, they could turn one of those guys around for some pitching at the trade deadline. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that happen because then if
Mhm.
they trade Abreu, for example, then they have Jaron Duran, Sadam Rafaela, and then Roman Anthony as their primary outfield. And then they can kind of move Rafaela around as needed because he can also play in the infield. So I don't think they would want to get rid of him because there's
Right.
multiple areas of his game that he provides value in. But I would not be surprised if they float around those names closer to the trade deadline if they're trying to get some good pitching in return. So that's definitely something to be on the lookout for. But if they decide we want to keep all these outfielders, we're probably going to make Rafaela more of a utility guy. And we want
Yep.
Duran, Abreu, and Anthony to be our everyday outfield. And that's what they decide to do. Then this is a big opportunity for a guy like Duran, who's hitting in the leadoff spot, to really elevate his game. I mean, last year he had a great season, won All-Star Game MVP, and just was one of the best leadoff hitters in baseball because of his overall game and what he provides. And there aren't a lot of players that are as versatile as Jaron Duran. So this is really an opportunity for guys like him to step up because they're going to need guys to step up
Yeah.
in Devers' absence. Now they're going to need
Yep.
even the rookies like Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony. Now is when this is their time to really prove that they belong here
Belong.
and that they're
Yep.
ready to take on that major league pitching. So this is a good opportunity for guys like that to really grow into their roles here and for the Red Sox future to really be put on display in terms of the young talent that they have right now.
I love that. I love that perspective, and I really do appreciate that. I want to ask you about surprise teams this particular season. I know, once again, I know it's super early, but for me, a surprise team was definitely the Orioles. I thought the Orioles would come back and be a really solid team. They really didn't, you know, and they really struggled. That was, and they struggled right off the bat in the beginning of the season. Um, didn't think I thought the Rockies would be bad, but Gabby, my gosh, they're awful. They're not very good.
Yeah.
And when you're talking from somebody who is like, if they're gonna be bad, that's good. I'm a Padres fan, so please continue to be bad. But Lord have mercy, like 50 plus
Mhm.
losses this soon in the season is just bad. That's awful. So tell me, who are your surprise teams or who kind of surprised you? It could be positive or negative so far in the MLB and why.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on Baltimore. I actually thought they would have another solid season and contending for the AL East. I was a little bit concerned after they lost Corbin Burns and they didn't really do a whole lot to replace
Yeah,
him in their
yeah,
starting rotation. So that was something that I said could hold them back this year. They also lost Santander, and that was another big piece in their lineup last year. And the moves that they made in the offseason, I didn't really feel were drastic enough to fill those holes. So I definitely felt like they might not have as good of a season as they had last year, but I was like, they still have a ton of young talent on that Orioles team. Still a lot of players who have been stepping up that contributed towards their big season last year. So I
right.
truly thought that they were going to be better than they are right now. Things have gone seriously wrong for that Orioles team. As of late, they've kind of been playing a little bit better baseball. But I did not think at this point in the season that they would be last in the division and that
Yep,
they would be a team that people are talking about as like, what is wrong with Baltimore? That's definitely not something that I ever really expected or thought was going
absolutely.
to happen. I also think like an interesting team, an intriguing team this year has been the Angels because they've been playing some teams really tough, like over
Yeah,
500 teams. They've been pulling together wins against teams that they shouldn't be beating, and they're not that far out of the mix right now. And that's a team that I feel like always is like people want them to be relevant because they have Mike Trout on the team, but they haven't
hmm
really been relevant. And now Trout's been mostly healthy this year. which is a miracle for where he's at in his career.
Right.
And that's a team that I think could sneak in if they continue to pull together some wins the way that they are. And that's actually kind of surprising to me too, because they're not really a team that I pictured as being in the conversation at all, but they're kind of lingering a little bit. And they're beating teams they shouldn't beat. And that's something that's definitely intriguing to watch. They might miss the playoffs, but they are a team that could sneak in quietly because nobody's really talking about it, but they're kind of lingering in that mix right now of kind of
Yeah.
being in that conversation.
And you're starting to see some, and it's funny that you said the Angels because you're really starting to see some other guys produce. Joe Adele has been producing.
Hmm.
Shunzel has been producing. Nito has been producing on that team. And it's just been guys outside of Trout. They haven't really relied on Trout to be that guy, to be the driving force on that team. And he's obviously playing a lot of DH, and they're saving him for the hitting spots. And although he is still playing outfield, but not playing his normal position, which is center field. They've moved him in different positions when they do play him out there. So I like that pick. I was thinking about the Nationals, though. The Nationals are playing some decent baseball. I wouldn't say that is like super great because we're talking about the Washington Nationals, but at the same time, um, they they've been playing really solid this year. They have some really good players. I like Abrams. I like Wood. I like Ruiz on their team. Those three in particular jump out to me. The NL East, I mean, outside of the New York Mets, I mean, the NL East is just it's pick the litter. I mean, really, just either team except the Marlins. The Marlins, they're bad, but those other three teams with the Braves, the Nationals, and oh well, sorry, Phillies too. Phillies and Mets. Phillies and Mets are up there, but the Braves and the Nationals and the Marlins, no chance that they'll win the NL East. But I do like the Nationals playing decent ball and a lot better this year, in my opinion, because you see they were pretty bad in the previous years. They were getting beat down pretty bad. Now they're at least fighting, and they're actually pulling out some games and winning some games. So I think that's a surprise team for me for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of young talent with that Nationals team.
Mhm.
I think they're still a ways away from being a true contender, but if they
Sure.
continue to build on what they have going right now, they could really actually be building something there. And that's something that's going to be interesting, I think, to follow over the next couple seasons because they definitely have some pieces there that they can work with. And usually people laugh at the Nationals like, haha, they stink, ever since they came out of nowhere and won the World Series.
Right.
Things have just been really, really downhill for them. But
Right.
I think there's talent there that they can work with, and like you said, they're definitely showing some fight in a lot of their games, and I think that's something that is definitely intriguing to watch. And I think if they have a big off season this upcoming season and they keep adding to that core that they're starting to build there, we could see them be a tough team in the next couple seasons here, which would make that division really interesting.
No doubt, no doubt. Now you did mention it before. Obviously, the Giants are about, I believe, coming to Boston this particular Friday. And I'm sure you're going to be at the game. There's no question about that.
No,
What do
it's
you?
the Red Sox are going to San Francisco.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
I
know you're gonna
wish.
probably. Yeah, right, right. That would be amazing. So I know you're obviously going to be on top of that game. What are you most looking forward to in that particular series in that matchup with Rafael Devers welcoming his old team back to his new stomping grounds now in San Francisco? What are some keys that you're looking at for that game or some storylines?
Yeah, hopefully him not dominating us. That would be fantastic. No, but I think it'll be interesting to see him go up against the Red Sox pitching. Because that's new for him. And that's not something he's really used to. So that could throw him off a little bit. I think like it'll be interesting to see how the Red Sox pitchers navigate throwing to him because they've never had to do that before.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that I'm looking for here is are the Red Sox pitchers going to be able to figure out how to throw to Devers since that's never been part of their game plan before? And from his perspective, how's he going to approach them? I think, it puts the Red Sox at an interesting spot here because Devers knows these pitchers, he knows how they throw because he spent
Right.
so much of the season so far with all of these guys. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to see how that changes his approach at the plate. I'm excited to kind of see how things go down. I think it'll be a little bit weird for everybody to kind of see him in a different uniform. Um,
Yep.
I think he'll, welcome everybody with open arms, but I'm interested in seeing the way that our pitchers go about pitching to him because that could be a big difference in the series because he's going to go out there with this sense of motivation of, I want to play well against them because they just traded me naturally. So that could be a tricky situation for us to navigate.
Yeah, it's gonna be the one thing I was thinking about, Gabby, was where are they gonna put Devers in the lineup? Because you got a lot of problems with that San Francisco hitting lineup with Adamez, Ramos, Lee, Chapman. They can definitely put him in a situation where he can kind of be protected a little bit because you just they got a lot of problems in that, especially that top half of that lineup of the San Francisco hitting order. So, and Devers did pretty well last night. I think the Giants went down though. I think they lost to the Guardians last night, 3-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But he did drive in one of their runs. Devers did. So, he'll be ready, and it'll be interesting to see that series for sure. No doubt when it comes about this weekend.
Yeah,
Um,
it'll be interesting to see where he plays at the field, if at all, because that's another like conversation that they've been having is like because they've been having him take some reps at third base and having him take some reps at first. He said
mhm,
he'll play anywhere, of course,
right.
wherever they need him to play. So it'll
Yep.
be interesting to see if they DH him or if they have him play in the field because that hasn't been determined yet as to what they're going to do about that. So I'm interested to see, come Friday, what the decision is there.
Sure, absolutely. Let's get into some Celtics talk. Obviously, the big thing revolving around the Celtics is Tatum's injury,
Mhm.
and how long he'll be out. It's an estimated time. He'll probably be out till All-Star break,
Mhm.
since he got injured in May. Probably February is the return, which that would be like the most optimistic of returns. But also now there's talk of with new ownership coming in, how much money do the ownership want to spend on this team? You got two guys that's making $300+ million. You also have another couple guys that's making over $125 million in White and Holiday. So you got your core four, but now what's the rest of the team going to look like? What is Chris Stapps going to still be there? Is Horford still going to be there? Now with the moves that Orlando made, picking up Desmond Bain, with Orlando, now they see an opportunity to try to get better. And they're a young team that's going to be up and coming. The Knicks and the Pacers are not going to go nowhere. They're still going to be pretty good, right? So, and Cleveland was just the number one team this year. So, talk to me about your outlook on the Celtics, Tatum's injury, if you've heard anything as far as Boston Celtic news.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting year for the Celtics. I think people were going into this past season expecting a repeat, which, I don't blame them. That was a lot of fun when they won the championship. And I think people were hoping they would go back and do it again. Um, and then Cleveland just goes on this remarkable run this season that I don't think a lot of people were really anticipating. And they get the number one seed in the East, but the Celtics are the 2 seed. And it's still like, okay, we're in a good spot. We feel pretty good going
Sure.
into the playoffs. And then all of a sudden the vibe changes because Tatum goes down with an injury. And it's like people were saying, like, I don't even care that we lost. I care a lot more about Tatum's injury. Like, this really hurts to have to watch. He's our star player. What are we going to do? And I'm
Right.
seeing a lot of what I think is overreactions in terms of where the Celtics are at now. A lot of
Right.
people are like, well, it's going to be, years of rebuilding now because we won't have
Oh,
Tatum for a while. And now, like,
okay.
we're a rebuilding team. That's definitely not true because even if taking Tatum out of the equation, this is still a very talented basketball team. There are still
It
a
is.
lot of other players who can step up and contribute in Tatum's absence. And I'm not necessarily going into this upcoming season with the mindset that the Celtics should just forget it all and rebuild, even if they're going to be missing Tatum for an extended part of the season. I
Right.
do feel like the roster is going to look different going into next season. I'm hearing
Okay,
KP and Jrue Holiday's names both are being brought up a lot in trade conversations right now. I think there's a chance we don't see either one in a Celtics uniform because they have to
mhm,
cut back on some of those big contracts that they have on the books.
sure,
I know Derek White, Jalen Brown, and Jason Tatum are really the three that I still realistically see being here from that starting five. They really
mhm,
like Derek White and what he provides. So I don't think they really see him as somebody that they're taking it seriously when it comes to trading away. I know they're not excluding conversations on anybody. They're kind of listening to conversations on everybody, but they're listening a little bit more seriously on Porzingis and Holiday than they are the other guys. They wouldn't need to be blown away by a package to trade Jalen Brown
sure.
because they see him as a cornerstone piece. You know, they gave him that big extension, and they don't really necessarily see him as a piece that it makes sense to move unless they get blown away by something. Then there's a couple of these players off the bench, like Sam Hauser, who's another one that I think they are looking to move this offseason as well. But when
What
I
about
say
Pritchard?
move, hmm?
What about Pritchard?
No, they really want Pritchard to stay. I
Okay,
mean, he just
okay,
won six man of the year. He's somebody who they've really been impressed with over the course of his time here. And if they really are trying to build around a young core, it kind of makes sense to keep Pritchard because he's part of that core. And what he did for this Celtics team this
mhm,
season really got them to where they were. So I
makes
don't
sense.
think they really see him as a trade piece. I love Pritchard. I think he's great. I've loved him ever since he was playing in college, and I was like, I want him on the Celtics. And once he started to figure things out and really mold into his role with the Celtics team, he has been great. I really enjoy watching him. He's somebody that I don't necessarily think the Celtics would really even consider moving. I think he's somebody that they see as part of that glue moving forward. But as far as moving people goes, I don't think they're necessarily moving these guys because they want to rebuild. They're just trying to offload some of these contracts. And
Yeah,
Porzingis, especially, is a guy who has spent a lot of his time, unfortunately, injured in Boston. And when he was playing in the postseason, he didn't really show up that much. And it was almost like he was afraid of the
he wasn't
moment
himself.
and he just wasn't ready for it. And
Right.
so he didn't perform to the expectation that the Celtics needed him to perform at. So he's 100% kind of at the top of the list in terms of the Celtics and looking to move people. One thing about moving Jrue Holiday that's kind of a bummer would be that they lose a big defensive piece of the
Yep.
team. Great defender in him, but they are trying to build around their young group right now that they still feel really confident in. Because if you take a group of Tatum, Brown, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard, those are four really young pieces that you can continue to form a team around. Rumor
Right.
has it Al Horford is planning to come back for at least another year because the question over the last couple seasons has been, well, is he going to retire? Rumor
Yep.
has it as of right now, he's not ready to retire yet. Who knows if he's going to change his mind on that? But to my understanding, he is planning on coming back again. So everybody loves Big Al. He's like a fan favorite in Boston. So I think that's going to make people very happy. Plus, they have some interesting other young pieces off the bench too. That they hope to still kind of be part of this future, like Baylor Shireman and Jordan Walsh, guys who started to get a
Yeah.
little bit more playing time this past season. Shireman was a rookie and he got promoted from Maine to play in some games due to injury, and in the playing time that he got, he was impressive. And then Jordan Walsh is another one who got increased playing time this past season, and he's somebody too that I think they see as part of the future. So there's still a lot of young players here that they can work with. I just think in order to kind of formulate a team that they want for the future that could still contend, they can't really afford to still have Porzingis and Holiday on the books as well
No.
as these rest of these guys that they're paying. So it will be interesting though, because you brought up a good point with the new ownership group to kind of see their approach and see if they approach things differently or similar to how things have gone in the past in terms of where they're allocating their money with the Celtics team. But I do love Brad Stevens and the role that he's in He has had a
He's
lot
done a
of
hell of a
wins
job.
in terms of the moves that he has made, and I think he has a true understanding of needs with this
Yep.
Celtics team. And I just really like him in that role because I really do trust that he's a guy who can really get this team to where it needs to be. And he's really good about making sure that he doesn't get fleeced on trades. And if he does trade somebody, he's getting good returns on it. So there's not really anybody else I would want in that role when it comes to this offseason than him. But I do think we're going to end up going into the season next year with a new look Celtics team in some
Yeah,
capacity.
absolutely. I totally agree with that. KP obviously wasn't right. They called it an illness over the playoff stretch.
Yeah.
We didn't know what it was. Drew Holiday, he is a valuable piece, but he is also going to be turning, I believe, 35 years old next year.
Yeah.
And you definitely have to put him out there on the market because he signed, if I'm not mistaken, a 4-year, $126 million extension deal at one point. I may be wrong with the numbers, but I think it's 4-year, 126.
Yep.
It makes sense for them to keep White, Tatum, and Brown. This is still a very talented team, like you said. Championship, probably not without Tatum, but
Yes.
playoff team, no question. I think there's still a playoff team to definitely make some noise. It will be interesting to see what they do as far as the Celtics. Nice
Yeah,
bonus
because
question.
if they do get Tatum back, like if they can like kind of tread water until
Hmm.
Tatum comes back and they're,
Hmm.
in that playoff contention and then they get Tatum back ideally after the All-Star break for a playoff push in that last part of the season there, then they could be in good shape going into the playoffs. You never really know. Like you said, there's a lot of talent in the East still. If
Yep.
Tatum isn't able to come back and his timeline gets pushed back, then I definitely don't see them making a serious playoff run. They do need him in order to do that. But if he does come back for that final stretch of the season, that could be really good for the Celtics because things could hopefully maybe click for them going into the playoffs.
Possibly, absolutely. My bonus question for you is, how do you like the new All-Star format? The world versus the USA. Now, I'm not a huge all-star person, but in 26, what I do plan on doing, as I did in 25, I plan on going to the Super Bowl, but I also plan on going to the All-Star game. I'm going to be covering
Yeah.
both of those events. The All-Star game has been trash for the past few seasons, but this world versus USA format got me a little intrigued. What is your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I actually liked it better than the old one because with the old format, it was like kind of a joke, and it's still like they still didn't really fully like play 100% because obviously they wanted to avoid injury. But I thought
Yeah.
that like the bracket style play is interesting. And I think like having like a little bit more incentive to try to win it, I think is
Mhm.
good. And I think I really liked the creativity surrounding this format because I know that the All Star game was lacking excitement from a lot of fans, and they
It
felt
was.
like they needed to do something to change it up. And I feel like it does create a little bit of a sense of, okay, like we have all of these international players playing here, we have these USA guys playing here, and it kind of creates a deeper sense of motivation. I feel to be like, all right, like I want to represent my country, like we are the best in the league, like let's do this.
Mhm.
I found it interesting. I actually thought it was a little bit more interesting than what we had seen in the past. I don't know that it's something that they'll hold on to long term or not. But I definitely kind of liked it more so than the past because even over the last few seasons, like prior to this, I kind of felt bored watching the All Star game because I was like, all right, nobody's playing defense. Like, nobody's really taking this seriously at all. This is just
Mhm.
like kind of a joke. And like, I think a lot of people felt that way. But
Sure.
I actually did like it more this year.
Yeah, this year, with the breaking up of the teams and the coaches, that was nice. It was nice to have that. Nobody wants to see 230 points scored. I mean, that's just crazy. That's not even that's like NBA 2K and you doing like 20-minute quarters or something like that. I mean, you know what I mean? That's what
Yeah.
it is. So I'm intrigued to see what they do at the All-Star game in the format. I do hope that at this particular All-Star game, which I believe is going to be in the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles next year, which is
Mhm.
amazing. I hope they bring Sabrina and Caitlin and do a 3-point shootout and bring that out. I hope they do that. That'd be amazing.
That'd be so fun.
Um, I want to get into some Patriots talk with you as well. The Patriots, now, mind you, we haven't talked since a while, so obviously I have some thoughts, a few thoughts, because I didn't think Gerard Mayo should have been fired. However, however, I do like the hiring of Mike Vrabel. So I'm 50-50 on that because I do like Mike Vrabel there in that organization. I just didn't like the way they did Mayo. However, they also signed Stephon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million contract, and he immediately makes news outside of football on his boat, doing what he does. And Vrabel now has to talk about the outside distractions. Obviously, we kind of know who Stephon Diggs is dealing with now as far as Cardi B.
Yep.
Uh, but we also know the most important thing, he's coming off an ACL tear. When we don't know if he's going to be the Stephon Diggs of what he used to be in Minnesota or even Buffalo, right? Because he only spent 1 year in Houston and he got hurt. I think Drake May could surprise some people this year. I thought he has a live arm. I think that he's a solid quarterback, but that offensive line, Gabby, they got to protect this man. And you got a lot of changes to the offensive line this year with the Patriots. Talk to me about what you see with the Patriots and what you see with the outcome of the Patriots, and could they possibly sneak into the wild card? Because obviously, I don't think they're gonna beat Buffalo.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been an interesting offseason. I think it was a tough situation with Mayo because he was thrown into an impossible situation basically to succeed because obviously inexperienced head coach and gets given this roster that just doesn't have a lot of talent on it. Like, how does anybody succeed in that scenario? I feel like
Right,
there were a lot of people who were more and more against Mayo as the season went on because they didn't feel that he was showing improvements from a coaching standpoint. So people didn't feel like he was the right guy for the job. I don't think he was given long enough necessarily to be able
oh,
to
of
prove
course not.
himself. Like, I would have been interested in seeing him with a better roster and seeing how he navigates that. And if he still struggles in the same way, then yeah, then you go back and revisit it and say, okay, maybe he's just not the guy for the job. But you can't give a guy 1 year when the roster was what it was and the Patriots
Right,
were completely rebuilding. They had an absolute disaster of an offensive line and a rookie quarterback who didn't really have reliable people to throw the ball to. So like, it just wasn't
right,
really fair necessarily, I don't think. But like you said, I do really like who they brought in. If they were going to go and, decide we're going to bring in somebody new that we feel like is more fit for this job, Mike Vrabel would have also been my choice. He's familiar with the Patriots organization. He has head coaching experience, which I think is going to be a big thing for this Patriots team now, because I do think you want to give a guy like Drake May that type of experience, somebody who kind of knows how it is and knows
yeah,
how to handle the characters and the behaviors outside of football. And somebody who's going to be able to instill that discipline in this team, kind of like Belichick did, I think is really good for them because they weren't really a disciplined football team over the last couple seasons, really, but especially this past year. Just a lot of on field mistakes, and they just were not playing like a disciplined team. And I think that's something that Vrabel can come in and help fix this upcoming season. So I definitely think they're in a more stable situation now with him in coaching. I think that's where it starts, and I think that's going to set them up for success because this is a guy who I really feel like has a lot that he can provide to a Patriots team, that he understands where they're at right now. He understands that they're a team that is kind of rebuilding, but is really trying to now kind of make that push. I think they're going to have a better season than people think. I think, Drake May showed a ton of promise last year, despite the fact that he had zero protection and again didn't really have a reliable receiving core. I think he has a lot of
right,
raw ability. And I think that's something that he was able to showcase last year and something that he can continue to put on display this year. When they made the decision that they were not going to play Brissett anymore and they were going to throw Drake May into the fire, I was like, oh gosh, like this kid might get destroyed by this offensive line. I was like,
right,
until they fix this
right.
offensive line, can we just like not have him play? Because I like don't want this kid to suffer like an injury that drastically impacts his playing trajectory because we don't have an offensive line. I do
Right.
think the offensive line will be better because they did do a lot to address that, this offseason and in the draft. I think that's something that, we hopefully see is improved
That
because that
that
was
needs
their
to happen.
weakest area last season was clearly the offensive
Mhm.
line, absolute disaster. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing that a little bit more this year. And I think, you look at a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who has just continued to elevate his game over time. I
Mhm.
think he's a key piece to this team too. Antonio Gibson, I think, is not really talked about as much, but is a little bit underrated of a piece on that Patriots team who I think could really contribute a lot more this season because he's going to continue to get those touches. But the Stephon Diggs situation, I think that's an interesting one because obviously he's coming back from his injury, like you said. You don't really know how he's going to look, upon coming back from an injury. So I think there's a little bit of
Mhm.
a risk involved with it, but I think the reward could end up outweighing that risk by a lot because if he comes in and he is able to contribute what the Patriots think that he can, then all of a sudden it looks worth it that they brought him in. And I do think there's something to be said for bringing in a veteran like that, who has been with a few different teams from like a leadership standpoint on the field. I think that's
Right.
something that could help make a difference with this team too. So I have high hopes for him and what he could bring to the table, but I think he could be a serious weapon for May as long as he's able to go out there and make that transition smoothly after recovering from his injury. But I do think the Patriots have a shot. I mean, their schedule is definitely in their favor this year, is something I will say. I do trust that they'll beat the Jets because the Jets are the Jets. I think they actually will split with the Dolphins. They never beat the Dolphins on the road, so like that's just let's pencil that in as a loss because for whatever reason they
Right.
can never play there. Even during the
Right.
Brady era, they could never win there. And then
Right.
Buffalo, I think they could take one of two from Buffalo this year, and I think that's something that
Hmm.
could be surprising to people. I
That
think
is
they could beat Buffalo at home this year. Um,
wow. Well,
that's something.
it might be a meaningless game though. They might be like, one of them week 18 games, you know what I mean? So it could be that.
Yeah,
So you got
they're not scheduled to play the Bills in week 18 this year.
oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that wouldn't be a situation where they're benching everybody. But I think that's something that could surprise people. I think they will be more competitive within their division this year than people think. Drake May has
Mhm.
a season under his belt. He has a little bit more help this year. He has an experienced head coach. I don't think they'll make any sort of deep playoff run by any means this year, but I think they'll at least be in the wild card conversation. I
I
have
think
them
so too.
finishing, like I have them finishing with like 9 wins. That's kind of where I'm at with this team right now. Is I have them
Yep.
finishing with 9 wins.
So you had them 9-8. I
Yes.
definitely had them around 9-8, 8-9, around there, for sure. I did have them in contention of the wild card this year because I do think Vrabel's going to have that defense, very good, very ready. Stevenson, as you said, they can tote the ball. May is great when he's upright. When you can
Mhm.
keep him protected, he can actually throw the football pretty good, and he can spread around pretty good.
I
I
think
love
his
that.
football IQ is really good too. I think
Yes, it
he's
is.
a really good on-field decision maker, and
Yep.
that's something that you don't always see in every rookie, and that's something I picked up on with him last year, was he was making a lot of the right decisions, and if he has the protection, like you said, and he has the time to be able to make the right play, that's something I think he's really good at that he brings to the table.
I love that. On here with Locked On Red Sox host Gabby Maljanian. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, now on the Work Hard, Play Harder podcast. Um, Gabby, I'm gonna ask you this bonus question and then I'll conclude the podcast here. But I loved your perspective on everything Boston sports, but I also want you on my NFL special as well. I think it will be amazing. And what my NFL special is we're talking about MVPs, division winners, we're talking about hot games. It's basically previewing the season. It's the NFL special that I'm going to be doing in about a month and a half or so. As it gets closer to the season. The season doesn't start till September 4th with
Yeah.
Cowboys and Eagles, but
Yep.
in August is when I want to have you on. I'm hoping that that is possible because I love just hearing your perspective. I love hearing you talk sports because you are so knowledgeable about it and so passionate about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that compliment. Yeah, for sure. Definitely let me know. I'll definitely do that.
Absolutely. Now, this last bonus question that I have for you is we obviously saw game 6 last night of the Oilers and the Panthers. The Panthers have went back to back. How do you feel about the ex-Boston player Marchin getting his Stanley Cup trophy?
Yeah, definitely bittersweet. It would have been nice if he got his second one with us. But like I was really happy for him, not happy for his team. I hate the Panthers, was not rooting for them, was rooting for the Oilers. I wanted them to pull it out because the last thing I wanted was to see the Panthers go back to back. But I was happy for him personally because he is somebody who deserved to get that second ring. Like was a great captain and leader for the Bruins. And it was great to see him happy and see him accomplish that. Now, give him back to us, please, because I want him back. But yeah, no, definitely not enjoyable for me to see the Panthers as a team win it. But I was happy for him. He deserves it for sure to have been able to enjoy that experience of winning the Stanley Cup because that hurt too for sure. That one hurt when that news broke that the Bruins were trading him. It had to happen with where the Bruins were at because they weren't going to be in contention anyway. So the trade
Right.
at the time made sense. But obviously, the emotional side of me was really hurt by it. But I am
Sure.
happy for him. I'm just, seeing him as happy as he was awesome to see. I just wish it could have been with us.
I totally understand that. And listen, that was a hell of a damn run that the Florida Panthers went on. Last year it was kind of like, okay, they were the team that was kind of expected
Yeah.
because they were pretty high. This year, they had to win some series on the road.
Yeah.
And they had to upset some teams. It was just an improbable run that Marchand, I'm sorry, led that team on. And I watched that game last night from beginning to end, Gabby, and I'm like, the Oilers are done. I mean, after the second period, they're done. They're
They had
just
no gas. Yeah. They had
they
no.
mentally checked out. They had
Yeah.
checked out.
And he was that piece they needed. Like, he was the piece that they needed to put that Panthers team over the top because he was
Without question.
huge in that playoff run, especially in this round, the finals. Like, he was a
Mhm.
huge reason why they won it. And they definitely at the trade deadline when they acquired him, that was kind of the icing on the cake for them.
Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt. Well, Gabby, I appreciate you coming on my podcast and talking sports with me, talking some Boston sports with me, giving your perspective on it. I love talking to you, girl, anytime. Now, like I said, I know you got your Boston Balling podcast, you got your Locked On Red Sox. People can check you out at your social medias is plastered all over. I just want to let you know that I am a huge fan of yours. I definitely tap in and tune in and listen to you. And I cannot wait for August because when you come back on my podcast and we do the NFL special, it's going to be quite the special show. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, definitely let me know. Thanks so much for having me on. I
No
appreciate it.
doubt. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your day and your week, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.